Welcome to that Japanese thing. This is episode 7. Today we're going to be talking about ReZero. A little bit of news up first, and then we'll be talking about what we've been reading and watching. Welcome, Dylan. Welcome, Yash.
Hey,
Hello,
how's it going?
hello.
Good to you guys.
Mm, doing okay.
Pretty okay.
We're going to just jump straight into it. First thing we're going to be talking about is a list of manga that are being considered, have been voted to be considered for turning into anime. This is a poll that, let's see, it's uh, Funimation, a Bandai, I guess? No, what's Funimation's thing in Japan? Is it just Funimation? It is Funimation.
It's just Funimation.
Just Funimation, yeah. So this is a thing that Funimation lists every year, and you can vote on if you live in Japan. Well, at least that's the implication, right? I think they don't allow you to log onto the website if you're not in Japan, so you might have to get around that some way. But this year's number one was last year's number 3, and it's called Senpai wa Otoko no Ko, which the English would be Senpai is a boy, I guess, is what people are going with. So it's about this cross-dressing boy. So Otokonoko is generally just means boy, right? Otokonoko, but they've used the ko part. They've used the kanji, which means daughter, for that, and it's a common term, I think, to refer to a cross-dressing boy who dresses as a girl. So yeah, it's a romance manga. I read the first few chapters just to see what it's about. A very basic web manga, infinite scroll style. There's not much to the drawing, and it just looks like a standard kind of high school romance about this junior who is a girl who falls in love with the senpai who is a boy dressing as a girl, and initially she doesn't know that he is a boy, and that's basically the initial setup for the first one, I think. In the second one, she finds out he is in fact a boy, and then seemingly likes it even more. So think of that what you will, I guess. What do you guys
From
think?
what I have seen, it's drawn in a very fluffy slice of life style of manga, and
Yes.
it's been relatively popular for a fair period of time. So it makes a good degree of sense that it would be popular. I think we were talking before this, and we had said that perhaps a degree of why it ended up ranking first is that there's a certain level of burnout with hundreds of shonen and hundreds of isekai. So the demand for other things are slowly increasing. We've in fact seen some very good slice of life in the last 3 years, and slice of life had been relatively dead before that.
Yeah, that's true.
Obviously, there's the occasional entry, but it has been moderately unpopular until recently. And now this is a very slow-paced romance.
Maybe this is the cycle everyone's talking about that'll get us, maybe not away completely from isekai, but onto something new. Because
maybe.
old people like us, Yash, remember that the last big slice of life thing was your Lucky Star, your Azumagedayas, and immediately following that, we got into things like Bakemonogatari,
Yes,
and then
I've
directly into
always,
all the fantasy stuff.
despite how burnt out we are, the older generation, with high school anime. I know our friend Greg is so burnt out on it he won't watch an anime that's set in high school.
No, he hates it.
They're fantastic entryways or gateways into watching anime, as a lot of them deal with the day-to-day of normal school life, even though it's set in Japan, even though some of the customs are a bit different. A lot of the emotional stuff and personal interaction stuff is usually very relatable to people. And
I
then,
used to also hate high school stuff, but I think as we're getting a bit older, I kind of like it now because it's not so personal anymore.
I think the last 4 years have really beat out any sense of like boredom with high school in us and brought back the feeling of remember when I didn't have responsibilities and the world wasn't on fire?
Yeah. Very much that, I guess.
So there's a certain nostalgia bait attached to it nowadays. But I do remember I was also kind of burnt out on high school anime. And a high school romance is just really not my genre. So I have a hard time judging this. When I first heard your story headline that it had won one of the more popular polls, I was actually thinking it was a internet fake thing where people brigaded voting for it for lols. But after a moment of thinking, I have to say that's just my personal bias because I'm personally not into romance. But it's been popular and it won first place this time because people might be more into that right now rather than their 67th or 87th isekai.
Yeah. I mean, it does. This list also does have the normal things you'd think. I saw the number 2 is Aruhi, and I immediately thought, oh my god, it's another like Anohana kind of thing.
Oh,
But I don't actually think it is. It's about becoming a princess, right? So,
okay, thank God. I can't take another Anohana.
and then there's a God of Destruction one, solo leveling, Korean power fantasy. Then there's a girlfriends one, which I assume is based on a game.
Solo leveling is definitely getting an anime. That's not even a question. Solo leveling, sorry, we didn't really. This is a side tangent, but solo leveling kind of changed the manga scape for a while. It's a Korean manga, but it took over Japan for like 2 years.
Yeah.
So that's definitely getting an anime, and that's definitely going to be big.
I think after Tower of God, you're probably going to get a few more Korean anime.
Yeah, we're going to get a few more Korean translations.
And there's something called Kaiju number 8, which I don't know what it's about, but probably about kaiju, and specifically a kaiju. But yeah,
Oh God.
yeah.
Yes. Carry on.
Uh, no, go on. What are you going to say?
Oh, sorry. I was just remembering. There was a manga where kaiju were shot with a specific magical potion from a magical high school girl to transform the kaiju into magic high school girls, who were then registered by the government to go attend high school and have slice of life while being kaiju.
If you also watch Gridman, that's kind of
What it's about in a way.
well, I
Yeah.
mean, kaiju can transform seemingly into like normal people as well.
Mm.
Yeah.
But this was specifically the like silliest high school drama girls club of kaiju doing tea parties together to talk about how they destroyed cities in the past.
And yet it sounds very normal.
And they're watched over by a teacher that's a magical schoolgirl. And then yeah, that's an anime. Sorry, a manga.
Cool. All right, guys. What do we have next? Yesh, you had.
I'll go next. Netflix of Japan is currently under investigation by the Tokyo Regional Taxation Bureau. This after 153 countries, sorry, 135 countries, my bad, agreed to a taxation generalization agreement called GAFA, Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon Control. That's specific as all heck, but
Right.
anyways. After investigating some of the tech companies inside Japan, they've discovered that roughly 1.2 billion yen of income, after calculating profits and other things, have not been declared by Netflix over the last 6 years. Netflix of Japan, sorry, not Netflix.
Yeah.
And they are investigating why this money was not declared. They have further found that a Dutch firm is claiming that that is streaming fees. And when asked to explain said streaming fees, have not provided a very good explanation or a satisfactory one, just declaring it to be streaming fees. So
Yeah,
they are now
streaming
under
fees
extreme
streaming
investigation.
directly into someone's Swiss bank account, I assume. Right.
Money streaming directly into bank accounts, correct.
Yes.
So yes, Netflix of Japan is currently kind of on the hook for roughly 10 million USD for undeclared income.
Netflix as a brand does appear, to have some issues, I guess. But
They have some interesting security concerns.
indeed, they're very particular about their intellectual property, and I think that's maybe a result of the companies maybe not trusting them
As much as they do other Netflix projects.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, if you go and look at like Netflix Korea, which has basically the identical library, it doesn't have similar issues. So there is maybe something going on there that's not exactly apparent to the general public.
I look forward to seeing what the investigation brings up.
Sadly, it's happening in Japan, so it will be
Yes,
resolved out of court.
decades.
You probably won't hear anything about it. But yeah, I hope they sort it out, and I hope Netflix Japan doesn't go away because it's got a lot of good stuff on it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Dylan, what you got for us?
Well, we've got Ghostwire Tokyo has been released yesterday on the 25th of March.
And what's that?
It's an action adventure first person genre game, and it's set in contemporary Tokyo, but with heavy paranormal elements. So basically, the premise or the initial plot of the game is that almost everyone in Tokyo vanishes in this singular incident, and spirits and other yokai start appearing around the city. And your protagonist is saved by virtue of having been possessed by a spirit detective named KK.
KK.
And you've got this sort of buddy cop sharing the same body type of storyline that progresses from there as you try and work out what's going on and how to stop it or bring the city back to some form of normality. I think it's quite interesting. It's by a developer named Tango Gameworks. They're based out of Tokyo as well. It's a Bethesda game, and I've seen the release trailers, and they've definitely taken inspiration from a lot of folklore, Japanese folklore, as well as things like onmyodo, their sort of older religious practices, the Mikyo, esoteric Buddhism. There are definitely going to be yokai themed entities inside of it. For example, you grapple from cityscape, sort of skyline to skyline via tengu. So shoot out a rope towards a flying tengu, and they take you up.
I mean, why is it always Tokyo, right? That these little things happen to in fiction. I mean,
it's always New York. It's always Los Angeles. Everywhere sets it in their
sometimes San
capitals.
Francisco, right? But it's always those particular ones, I guess.
Mm.
And Tokyo, I think, has maybe a disproportionate amount of shit happening to it in fiction. Like if you ever had like a space empire that exists, for in real life and has no sense of humor or understands fiction, doesn't understand fiction, they'd like show up to Earth, blow up Tokyo, and go, "You're welcome."
Yeah. I think it comes with a cataclysmic trope or apocalyptic trope that is in a lot of Japanese media. If a rural zone takes damage, it's sort of the damage is spread out, so it's not as hard hitting. But if you have like a city that suddenly either all the occupants disappear or there's a mega cyborg explosion inside of it, then it becomes a case of think about the loss of life. It's going to be
I suppose
completely
if you have
impactful.
A city with the population of Florida and Texas, it's more impactful than Sleepy Town goes missing or something like that, I guess.
If a 30-foot tall robot falls down on a farm, oh no, some carrots. If a 30-foot tall robot falls down in a city, that's a high rise. That's many people dead.
It's also like why you get a lot of train scenes in anime and manga. And, if you think of Shinjuku Station, if something cataclysmic happened there, it's on a different ballpark to a countryside Bunsen.
Yeah, I mean, a kaiju couldn't put its feet down without crushing 100 people.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what kind of how does it play? Is it
So that with all of the cultural elements in it, you get a combination. From what I've seen, at least, you get a combination of Kuchikiri style magic. Kuchikiri are the hand gestures. I think in our circles, people probably know it better from Naruto.
sure?
When they do their jutsu. But those are actually derived from other older practices as well.
Sure.
From Onmyodo, you get like those Ofudo talismans that you can, they're just sort of like a type of magic where you throw a talisman that's in the shape of a piece of paper at something.
Yeah.
So you've got magic elements, you've got sort of the cultural elements, and then you've got a more traditional FPS style gameplay where you can sort of shoot things with actual weapons. And the idea is that, at least from what I've read, is that you damage the spirit entity that you're trying to banish until it gets weak enough for you to do a finisher on. And then this is sort of like a magical ritual that releases it to another plane of existence.
Is it an online game?
Sorry?
Is it an online game?
I don't know, actually. I think it's a single player predominantly. I think it was always designed as a single player.
Okay.
I might be wrong there. I don't want to say for sure.
I might
But it's
check
not.
it out. Yeah.
It doesn't look like a GTA style massively multiplayer game.
Okay. I mean, I think
Yeah.
a paranormal single player game makes more sense, probably.
Yeah. It looks like it has a very good storyline. So
cool. We'll definitely check that out. And I think moving on to our topic then. So our main topic will be what are we talking about? So our main topic will be ReZero today. I think we're just going to be talking about the two series. Yesh will no doubt talk about some of the light novels.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we're just going to have a general conversation about it. It's the last of our big four isekai. So I suppose the week after next, we'll be talking about Isekai Quartet and maybe a bit of the upcoming movie. And probably then we'll decide on something else. But today, ReZero. So Dylan, what's ReZero about?
Sure. It's an isekai where the main protagonist gets transported into a fantasy world, high magic fantasy world, where his special ability that makes him unique is that when he dies, time gets rewound to a certain point that intermittently progresses as he achieves milestones, I suppose, that he's unaware of.
Yeah,
and
so it's like a save point.
Yeah, exactly. That's what he calls it. And it's got the standard isekai tropes. So he's got a harem that sort of forms around him as the series continues. And he starts off very powerless. And as he progresses, he
remains that way.
Well, he does actually get abilities from some of the progress that he makes that allows him
seemingly
a little bit more
to make a
more option. Smoke screen and unseen hands, and I'm assuming that in later series he'll get other witch factors that will make him even more powerful.
Certainly into what's his name? Betelgeuse.
Betelgeuse.
Yeah.
Which I'm almost half convinced is a play on Beetlejuice, right?
Probably couldn't write out Beetlejuice. So
yeah, because they sometimes when they refer to him by the short name, it's Juice.
In the light novel, the great sage, or whoever planted the tree, Flugel, the great sage Flugel, said that he found it funny that it was supposed to be Betelgeuse, the planet, not that planet, the star,
Right.
Betelgeuse, but it was
Okay.
purposefully misspelled Petelgeuse for some reason.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's that PB dynamic.
Mm.
But yeah, so in the storyline, basically, in this world, there are witches in their history that have become almost like folklore-ish icons, and those witches, for most of the series that you know about, deal with the seven sins. So there's a witch for each of the seven sins, and 6 of them were essentially defeated and consumed by the Witch of Envy, which is the world's equivalent of a boogeyman. You don't name her in public. It's very taboo, as they cover in I think the first
Okay.
episode,
So,
second
I mean,
episode.
I think let's dive into a bit of detail, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
So our main character is Subaru. He is a little Japanese boy who is transported without dying this time. So a win for him, the first time round.
Natsuki
yeah.
Subaru.
Natsuki Subaru, who is stopped going to school, so he's a hikikomori. I wouldn't call him like a NEET or anything. He's still a boy. You have to actually not be working.
I would say he's also very clearly emotionally damaged when he first enters. Because of all of the protagonists I've seen go to another world, he's the only one who blinks, ends up in another world, and accepts it immediately.
Yes. And the storyline seems to be to basically emotionally damage him more and more and more until he gets used to it, essentially.
To break him in.
To break him in. So there are the cast of characters. The female lead is Amelia. She is a half elf who resembles the witch, the boogeyman Dylan was talking about, Satella.
The
We
Great
have
Witch of Envy.
a weird wizard, undead kind of weird wizard, sort of immortal guy called Roswell. 2 half demons, or 2 demon twins, I should say. Rim and Ram. Otto is actually quite important down the line, I suppose. He's a major
Otto,
character.
just a human.
Well, sort of, not really. He's got super bug powers.
He's just a human.
But I mean,
He got a blessing, but all humans have blessings.
but not just a human. And then some more minor characters, I would say. Garfield comes along a bit later in the series. We've got some of the beastmen, merchants, people vying for position. Who's the super powerful cheat guy? What's his name?
Oh gosh, I know who you're talking about, the Swordmaster, but I can't remember his name right now.
Geralt or something, but not, obviously The Witcher. But kind of similar to that sort of feeling.
Oh,
Got
yes.
a sword, seemingly can do anything, defeat any enemy, that sort of thing.
It's the
And
Swordmaster, yeah. Oh, there's Reinhardt, yeah.
Reinhardt,
thank
the
you.
current Swordmaster.
It was
Sorry. I was thinking you were talking about the more elderly
the
Swordmaster.
gentleman.
Yes.
And then I suppose there's those are the merchants I was mentioning, like that. They're the great family. But yeah, so Subaru is attached to Roswell as a servant. Roswell is the head of a house, I think you could describe
And
him
he's
as that.
also the noble backing Amelia's claim to the throne.
Yeah, and
Yes.
Amelia, for some reason, has some sort of claim to the throne. It's not clear why, really.
The explanation we are given is that there are these scales from the dragon that are related. The dragon is related to the royal family who have died out. In the succession ritual, there are these scales that have little gemstones attached to them. Whenever anyone who can meet the requirements for the agreement holds this item, the gem glows.
Yeah,
And
so
Amelia has shown that when she holds the scale or the sigil of the royal family, the gem glows. So she becomes a candidate.
So I mean, as I said, not clear why that she would be considered one of those things. She's initially presented as quite like a weak-willed, demure kind of girl, I guess.
She's trying to appear as worldly and cynical, but everything she does is too pure and innocent and against her own self-interest,
And
at least in the beginning.
the tone of the story is the interesting thing about it, I think, because it's punishing. It's kind of hard to
Yeah,
watch
yeah,
ReZero.
yeah. It is.
For
Because
me, ReZero is very much the one that catches my attention from a world setting standpoint.
yeah, but
Because there's this
just to
eldritch horror background.
yeah, but to explain, right? It sets you up to feel defeated all the time. It sets you up to feel like the story has failed at every turn. So
Yeah.
it'll make you like a person, it'll make you like the progress that that person has made, and then it'll kill them or torture them or do something unspeakable to them, and then Subaru will die, right? Or he will commit
Yes. Yeah.
suicide, or something will eventually kill him, and he'll reset to a previous time. And this is slowly kind of crushing his spirit in the beginning of the series.
Exactly. The fact that all of his relationships set to zero again, or basically to zero, as soon as he dies, really crushes him in the beginning, especially. But also, as a way to make sure that we don't get confused and think that this is a power fantasy isekai, Subaru is horrified and terrified of dying. He doesn't want to do it. Every time he dies, he visits an incarnation of Satella, who then gives him extreme fear and pain before he is restored.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So
And accrues the trauma of dying. Yeah.
and increases the trauma of dying. So his power is not something where he can just try the same day 67 times and it's fine. He can just do it perfectly every time.
Yeah.
Each death costs him sanity.
and he
And
doesn't seem to be able to mention this to anyone except another witch, right?
Yeah.
So you can never tell anyone that this is happening to him. In fact, the only person that seems to know is Roswell, and it's only because he's guessed.
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
he doesn't have a firm idea,
Yeah. And
but he's under the impression.
every time he tries to say something, there's sort of the witch's grasp on his soul or his heart. And
Represented
there's
by
even
a
a
hand, like cold
yeah.
hand on his heart, right?
Yeah, and there's even a scene where he actually powers through that, and he actually successfully tells Emilia, but that immediately kills her.
Yes.
And then
So
the witch just kills Emilia. Yeah.
yeah, so there's no winning in that regard. Like the rules are very firm in that regard.
Although
At
it's
one
kind of
boy
unclear
does.
why he has that power. Although I'm sure it's explained in greater detail in the novels, but
It's not explained concretely, but there is some pretty strong background lore pointing at an answer. The problem I have with accepting that answer is it's a modern day writing style to be like, haha, gotcha. We subvert expectations. And I have to say, every time I see an expectation subverted in movies I've watched, it has been not only disappointing but outright angering.
and we do get a conversation with Satella in the show where you sort of get some idea that she is just kind of choosing when he goes back to, and then choosing the new save points when
So that's one
he's
of the
made
things
progress.
that eldritch horror. He has to die to experience his power, but also he doesn't control it.
Mm.
So in the beginning, he's not sure if he has limited regenerations. And not only that, but he has no idea where the save point is set to when he goes.
There's that scene where he's speaking to a kitten, and he actually asks her if that if his power has got a limit to it.
Mm.
And I feel they did that really well, because the way she answers, eventually the answer is she suspects that there is no limit. But when she says that, you kind of realize that's actually the more horrifying answer.
Yes, he
You know,
can
right? There
never
is
actually.
no out. There is no out. You can't escape this. There is no way to escape this. You are stuck in this
But I mean, that's yeah.
hellscape.
And
Yeah.
and then because she suspects that that's true, she wants to make a contract with him.
Mm.
So she can essentially kill him over and over again, right?
Because
Ugh.
he is unlimited knowledge.
Yes.
She can do
Yeah.
whatever she wants to him and he'll be fine.
She's the Witch of Greed, right? That's her thing.
Yes. Yeah.
and so
She is
she
the witch
wants.
of greed, and greed of knowledge is how hers specifically manifests.
So she
Well, yeah,
wants to experience every iteration of his life again and again, right?
yeah.
As greedily as possible. So he's the perfect kind of uh, pawn for her. Obviously, it doesn't work out that way.
Yeah, I mean, we should mention that she's actually dead in the world. This is her spirit, so she can't almost directly affect the real world or experience the real world. She's got to do it through essentially intermediaries.
I do
And
want to say as well, I thought it was particularly well done. The way that she appears initially to be almost a savior to Subaru, because he can
Yes.
finally unleash and tell everything he's going through to someone. And she is someone who will keep her memories of him to a certain extent and all of that until it is revealed after a time, after some effort, that every witch, they are what they are. She is the witch of greed. Her greed overrides everything. She is
Yeah.
not there to save him. She is there to try and claim him.
Mm.
I mean, she keeps also saying, "I'm a very bad witch," right? A very
Oh,
bad
she
witch
says that, but
that occasionally does good things. Is
Yeah,
her
yeah.
tagline. But yeah,
Uh,
let's talk about I think season one, right? Before we
Mhm.
get into
sure.
how do you say echidna in English?
Echidna, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so season one is completely a different tone to season two. I think it's darker, and at the
Mm.
same time also funny and lighter at sometimes because you get some of that kind of romance,
Mm.
teenage
I
drama
think
with
season
running
one
around.
does a very good job of presenting a very light, fluffy setting and then leeching that out into the
And then
horror.
having your characters mauled apart to death by rabid magical beasts or something,
Mm. And
which of course
also the
happens in season
cult.
two. But yeah. Oh, that's something that goes through both seasons. I mean, let's talk about Juice Beetlejuice.
And the archbishops of the sins.
So
Yeah.
every witch has their archbishop, I suppose.
Yeah, which I
And
don't think are actually selected by those witches. I think they're part of the
From what I
witch cult
understand,
for
they're not
Satella.
selected by the witch herself.
Yeah.
Their power is put into a book called something. I can't remember the
The
name.
gospel.
The
Yeah.
gospel. Well, in the anime, it's called the gospel. I think it's like a
Uh,
responsibility or something
no,
in the
it's
light
called the
novel.
Gospel, or maybe in the manga. Yeah.
But basically, that responsibility gets given to an archbishop, and then gospels get handed out to their cult.
That I don't know, that little girl that destroyed Emilia's home seemed to
Mm.
be able to just hand that duty to him. So maybe she decides.
That's the thing. It's a bit confusing, but yeah, it does look like that little girl. By the way, that little girl's like a witch, basically.
are you
Pandora,
talking
right?
about Beat
Pandora.
Pandora?
Not B, not B.
Okay.
The witch of
Of
vainglory,
vanity. Yeah, of vanity. Yeah.
vanity. She seems to be in charge of, or partly in charge of the witches' cult, because she can hand out actual responsibility. Like she can
Mm.
make an archbishop.
And so Juice is actually Emilia's father, sort of, right? Maybe not by blood. It's confusing. I'm not entirely sure.
It is
He's
sadly confusing.
Yeah.
he's the love interest of her.
Her maybe mother.
Her maybe
Well,
mother.
it's not really her maybe mother. She's so that's the sister of her father,
But
right?
but
Fortuna's the sister
at
of the
every
father.
opportunity they choose to complicate that and imply that, oh, maybe she is actually Emilia's real mother, maybe she's
They
not.
they do, but I feel like they do eventually cop to the fact that Amelia is the daughter of the witch, and they imply that the witch essentially
Rose her.
married or got with her father, and her father's sister is Fortuna, and Fortuna took responsibility of Amelia as a child.
But for all intents and purposes, she is the maternal figure in Emilia's life,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Correct.
he is her father figure.
yeah.
And so, I mean, interestingly, so Juice is the antagonist of the first series in parts of it, except for that whale log.
Yes, yeah.
And Subaru kills him, right?
Yes,
Um,
yeah. And claims his witch factor. Yeah.
which is something that I don't know if they're ever going to deal with. That she killed his father. That would be an interesting conversation, I suppose.
I haven't really seen any dealing
Well,
with it.
I think Amelia through the trials sort of realizes that Beetlejuice has at that stage gone mad, right? And she's
Oh,
unaware that he's still around, even or was still around until he was vanquished. But
I'm sure, like, it's not going to be a big issue, but it's an interesting little
yeah,
tidbit of knowledge there.
So part of the trial she had to go through at the beginning of season 2 is accepting her past. So
yes,
when Betelgeuse had been appearing and threatening, she had no memory of her past because of her contract with Puck.
Puck. Yeah,
Yes.
that's correct. Who's my favorite character in the whole series? Puck is definitely the best.
Also implied maybe to also be the spirit of her mother.
Entirely possible.
I'm not sure.
And maybe
They're a
that one
greater
witch,
spirit.
right? So we also
Yeah.
see like that one witch that shows up in the spirit world when Ekidana sort of has a tantrum and leaves Amelia alone.
Yeah.
That tells her not to look back and then gives her a hug.
Yeah.
That
I mean,
may be Puck.
Puck is referred to often in the masculine, but has a very feminine voice. So it's very like confusing where Puck fits in.
Spirit, so
Yeah.
We were told
exactly.
that spirits don't have a gender.
Yeah.
Puck just chooses to appear this way, and Subaru calls it a
Yeah.
he because it got how Amelia is its daughter and acts like
Yes.
an old father figure.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's all Subaru's perspective.
Yeah.
but also has the same voice as the mother in the flashback. So there's something there.
But it's all very unclear and yet not unsatisfying.
It's one of those riddles that your brain tries to work out, and I think it's one that just doesn't connect at the end. So
Yeah, I feel like there's
guess-
definitely a lot of backstory to Puck that is still to come, at least in the
Exactly.
anime.
and then it's because if we didn't have the Beatrice part of that equation, then we just assume Puck was actually the mother or the father or something like that, right? But then we hear,
Definitely involved.
Beatrice is also a spirit created by
Echidna.
as her kind of sort of daughter, she calls her.
Yeah.
And Puck and Beatrice go and defeat the Dragon Lords, right? So there is an implied history that is completely detached from Amelia there.
Yes.
So it's confusing.
Everything is
I don't
confusing.
really know.
But I'm going to sound extremely condescending to a lot of isekai. In any other isekai, if this was written like this, I would just assume that the author had no intention of exploring it. He had no thought process involved with it. It's just a throwaway line. In this isekai, nothing feels like a throwaway line, even the lines that are definitely throwaway lines. Because this guy has brought back things and tied up loose ends so well that it always feels like the whole world is involved with the whole world.
It does feel like that vampire thing was planned, from the start, doesn't it?
Exactly.
And that sort of convinces me you might be right about some of that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel
I feel like I've been trained to just throw away any detail that is not explained in other stuff.
Right.
It doesn't mean anything. Author Kun is going to lose
Yeah.
interest. It doesn't matter. But in
you can't rely on
ReZero,
that a lot. Yeah.
I definitely pay attention to detail, and it usually pays off.
What do you think about Rem in terms of the story? So she's
Oh.
non-existent in terms of season 2 because she's in the coma.
I have a lot to say about this dynamic in general, but I'm going to leave that till a bit later because there's a whole TED talk on this, man.
Yes.
I'm sure
I
there
think
is.
Rem is perhaps the most harmful thing for Subaru in the beginning. Because she's a crutch
literally.
that tells him, yeah. I mean,
Literally.
okay, sorry. I don't mean when she's murdering him repeatedly either. But especially in the beginning of his story, she is this unending crutch that he can always go to say that he's right no matter what he does. He can be the biggest asshole, he can be the worst loser, and she will always be like, I'll run away with you if you want. I'll support you no matter what you do. Everything you do is right. I am unflagging support.
Yeah, she's the Japanese girlfriend who is very supportive of her man, right?
But also, when he's a trash bag, which he is in the beginning, she is the worst thing because she feeds his trash bagness.
Yeah.
A lot of
I feel,
people
yeah.
have said that
Yeah,
she
I
is the
mean,
best waifu.
I understand that. I don't accept that. His trashness is anyway related to her. It's just maybe it just is made worse by her though.
I
Yeah.
think definitely it is made worse by her. And we are shown this by when Emilia refuses to listen to him after he rants in the conclave of like the meeting for the new royal candidates thing, and he like shit talks white knights.
Right.
Emilia tells him she doesn't understand what the hell he's talking about when he's trying to rant about why he was right, and leaves him. But
I
she
I
says, I try to care about you, but you're not making me able to do so.
but I mean I'm very much behind Amelia in that as far as trash in the beginning of the series.
Yes, exactly. But she doesn't accept his trashiness. She wants him to please accept what he has done is wrong. And she doesn't forgive him until
Yeah.
he accepts that what he had did was wrong.
Yeah. So I think this like is a good intro into a theme that runs throughout the both seasons, is that they do almost like a implicit expose on virtues and flaws, and how some flaws, and I don't want to go too deep into it, but some flaws can kind of act as both, right? So Echidna has, for example, Echidna embodies greed and all of the really bad aspects of greed, but also the good aspects of greed, which, Subaru
Love of
has.
knowledge,
Well, not only
objectiveness.
that, like a big theme throughout that second season, right, is he tries to save everyone, where Roswell tries to get him to choose to only save Amelia, to really commit to that one thing, because Roswell doesn't think it's possible
Save
to
everyone.
sort of dilute yourself to the extent of trying to save everyone, and that you should accept that hard truth and torture and go for that laser like focus on it. And throughout that whole season, Natsuki is taking counsel with Echidna, and he's got that greed aspect to it where, no, it's going to be all right. It's going to be tougher, but I am going to save everyone. And so they've got that like duality of the deadly sins, in that they're not only negatives. They can be, and they definitely are. They've got both to it. And Natsuki himself starts off, and it's hinted that he actually, his special power is in fact the witch factor for pride. And Natsuki's character is extremely prideful, and that sort of becomes I think more apparent near the end of season 1.
Absolutely.
Beginning of season 2 is that you realize that Natsuki, it's when he confronts Betelgeuse a lot, because Betelgeuse constantly says, "Oh, you are definitely
pride.
You're definitely pride," and I think he's spot on the money. And you realize throughout the whole of season 1, he's completely correct. Natsuki's main flaw is that pridefulness, that ego that keeps coming in. But when he can learn to sort of bend it towards the right direction, often through the people around him and often through the trauma of having to reset each time, then he can get onto a better path, almost.
And I mean, he is slowly becoming one of the archbishops, which is, I think, something that you get with his mode of speech changing throughout
Yeah,
the series.
I mean, I hope it comes with a nice coffee mug.
So, guys, this leads directly onto something that I did want to bring up. This series is one of the most fucked up continuities I've ever tried to read through. The web novel version of this, which has been taken down sadly, because now that the light novel is popular, they don't want people to read ahead. And I'm assuming a lot of editorializing is going to happen, where some of the stuff is going to be altered because some of the story is very, very not okay anymore. In the future, one of the storylines that doesn't come to be but could have come to be, because time travel is part of this, is that Subaru becomes all 8 archbishops. Seven
Yeah,
archbishops.
I mean, I was kind of wondering about that because he's got Juice's mannerisms right now. Then he becomes like kind of a disciple of Echidna, and
Exactly.
all these various things keep
And he
happening.
has met the other witches.
Indeed,
And he consumes the witch factors. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely
and
like hints that
he
that's a
is like
path that could be
Satella's like
taken.
pawn, right? So it does seem
So
to
Yeah.
be.
in the web novel, it is a thing that could have happened but doesn't happen. So I'm
Yes.
not spoiling the actual storyline, but he gets presented with the archbishop of each of the other versions that are him as an archbishop of each of the other sins.
Yeah.
Mm.
And he does destroy some of the gospels in this one, so obviously that doesn't seem to be the thing that is going to happen. Although who knows if that's actually.
The main timeline, the one that we're following, the one that the anime is going through, doesn't do that. He gets Slot's power a little bit, but that's it.
Okay.
But, and I don't know.
We've already seen that he has the witch factor of Slot. That's in season 2.
Sure, yeah, he's got the hands and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not
yeah.
spoiling anything.
He's got some of Echidna's powers as well, via Beatrice. I think is what's
Beatrice's
fueling that.
contract with him.
Yeah.
Can I ask you guys, what did you think of the storytelling technique? Right, because you as the viewer, right, in this case, but I assume the reader when you it's a similar storytelling technique when you're the reader for the light novels.
So I kind of hate it because it always feels like you're going back, and then it just feels slow.
Sure, I feel there's definitely something to that for me, which is, so firstly, I have certain issues related to cycles without progress, and there are certain experiences I've had that this is very reminiscent of, and it is the literal definition of hell for me.
Yeah,
and it's I just think, just from like an artistic perspective, and that might be going a bit too far, but you almost commiserate with the main protagonist, right? Because he's going through this really painful experience every time he dies, and he gets reset to zero. And it's not just the death, which is in itself traumatic enough. It's the fact that he, in all his best efforts within that last frame, failed. And then the next time, and he does it again, even though he had additional information and made additional plays, it's almost like he's getting overloaded with how much he has to do to pull off a specific type of ending.
Roll the credits, hence the name ReZero, starting in a new world from nothing, right?
Yeah, exactly that. I feel like that technique almost is painful. Well, not almost. It is painful for the audience, right? In itself, just doing that it's grinding. And
yeah, one of the reasons ReZero is so low on my list of the big four is that it is hard to watch. You can't just watch like 5 episodes in a row.
Yeah,
it's really kind of hard on your mind.
I feel if they limited the amount of times they did that a little bit less, right? Because sometimes it gets excessive. Then it would be a lot smoother in terms of a storytelling technique.
That's why season 2 is better, because it only happened, I think, 3 times, and
so
it never goes back like weeks or months or anything like that.
I am on kind of the other side of the spectrum from you two on that particular regard. I have to say, I think it's because when it comes to emotions, I'm very reserved. I put on a show of emotion a lot of the time. I'm sure you guys know this. If I appear to be angry and you ask me a different question, the anger just vanishes as I answer something else. So for me, emotion is something that I put on so that I appear more human sometimes. And this show makes me feel. So for me, the repetition, especially the excessive repetition, is when it breaks through like my shell of I'm watching a show and gets me to the, oh God, this is horror. This actually feels bad.
Yeah,
and I understand making your audience feel bad is not great.
Yeah, no, they definitely convey emotional frustration very well.
The thing is, it's done. I mean, I think if it didn't have the gimmicks and the anime quality about it, I think we wouldn't like it at all because it's sort of just a kind of cheap way to make your audience have an emotion.
Fair enough.
Is to sort of just yank some plot line away from them and say, oh no, it was all just a dream,
Yeah.
or alternative future, or it didn't really happen.
Well, the
right?
thing is, it's not all a dream. Subaru has lost his connections, and we follow Subaru. That stuff doesn't vanish. Subaru still feels it.
Yeah,
so
and he
do
still
we.
But
knows.
he's a
supposed to acknowledge,
representative of the viewer. He's the
Of the
point of
viewer,
view, right?
to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, his perfect romance, that I think the second time after he died, I don't know if it was like the first time he died and their second day together, that near perfect day of romance he had with gosh, I've forgotten main girl's name. I keep calling her
Emilia.
Satella. Emilia. Because when she introduced herself the second time, she called herself Satella, so my brain got stuck there. But that day where he had the perfect romantic day with her just evaporated. And then he
Yeah.
tried to recapture it, and he never could.
Yeah.
That little bit of like regret and sorrow that he feels, that went away, it stuck with me. It really became a weight on me that he lost it and he couldn't get it back.
Yeah, it's definitely like an anime of gains and losses and slow progress, like 3 steps forward, 2 steps backwards kind of deal.
I think that's the point of the show, is that you just have to let go of things.
Exactly.
That don't
exactly
work, right?
that.
So
when he tried to recreate the perfection, it went wrong.
Indeed.
So I mean, I've got this anime is like got so many competing interests for me. There's a lot that I have personal issues with, but there's also a lot that makes it compelling for me. I think the writing is very good. I like the sort of explorations on the virtues and the flaws. I like the fact, like Yesh said, there are these little snippets of information that get dropped are not throwaway lines. They do coherently point towards a greater structure in the shadows, or a greater overarching plot line, where things will become relevant later on, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
It shows that the writing is good. It's very difficult to actually describe this series in a linear fashion because it's not a linear storytelling.
It's definitely not a linear
technique,
story.
right? That's it. So, and a lot of the exposition that the main character gets revealed and as a byproduct, the audience sees.
I mean, technically speaking, it is actually linear.
Yeah.
Because we never go back in time, really. We see some flashbacks, but they're all actually explained by, Ekidona's like trials, I guess. So nothing actually happens in the past in this. We're always experiencing the present, even if Subaru kind of goes to the future and then goes back again. It's all continuously his storyline. Or sometimes you go to
you can
Emilia's
see it
point
that
of view.
way.
Yeah,
but I feel like he goes back in time every time he dies.
Yeah, this is frame of reference. This is like frame of reference stuff. So if you take a step back, sure, if your frame of reference is the world, then that's correct, right? Because
if it's the world, then time travel, sure. But if it's Subaru or a character, then it's just a straight line.
Yes, correct. Yeah. But yeah.
Which, I mean, I like. It's simple. I don't like it when things jump forward and back and you get sort of...
Oh, no, there's no jumping around in this.
Yeah.
You can follow a timeline, yes.
And there's no unreliable narrator or anything like that. You have unreliable characters who might be lying, but everything is quite solid in the story. So
I want to talk about characters for a second. Sure. Nobody is a pure trope. When we meet...
I don't know about that.
Yeah, we're going to chat about that. Yeah, no, but carry on. Yes, tell us.
Okay. Apple seller man. Just a brash seller guy. Nope, has a family, does good deeds for Subaru because he helped him. Otto, guy we're going to travel with. Nope, best bro, absolute best character in the series. Fuck yeah. Roswell, some rich fuck who does politics. Nope, time traveling spirit monstrosity.
I don't know if he's a time traveler, but okay.
Oh, well, okay. He's from the past and he's been living for hundreds of years. My bad.
400, yeah.
He's 400 years old.
So he's kind of the Dorian Gray, isn't Dorian? Yeah.
Yeah, he's a
kind of Dorian Gray. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Roswell L Mathers. He's been through A through L in the alphabet.
That's true, right? That's what it is about it.
But almost every character we meet, and I'm not going to say every character, because the 3 thieves at the beginning, yes, kind of memey. But pretty much everyone else, even the swordsman, sorry, Reinhardt. Reinhardt has his downsides, his
Oh, yeah.
negatives. But like, I enjoy that even Murder Chick, Murder
Well,
Vampire Chick,
I was
has
gonna
a
bring her up.
history and a
Elsa,
story.
yeah.
I mean, a
Elsa.
history, but perhaps not. I mean, she is a trope. She is just the murderous sociopath who likes to kill for the sake of killing.
We
Yes.
call it disemboweling.
Yeah, disemboweling. Yeah, she's hunting.
She's a disembowelment
entrails,
fantasy.
right?
But I don't know. Maybe the story wasn't explained in the anime, but
So-
she has a history.
So here's a counterpoint, because I take what you've said, and I agree that layaway characters aren't just layaway characters. There's depth to them. But I have a bit of an issue, and I know that this is an issue maybe with isekai in general, but I feel like it's done a little excessively in this one. So
yeah.
for me, there in these stories, and not always in isekai, but as a prevalent theme, there's a high degree of audience insertion into the protagonist's role, right? It feels like it's set up so that you put yourself in their shoes, and fantasy fulfillment, right? The fact that harems in isekai just sort of assemble around your main character. But we were chatting about the characters' archetypes, and you were talking about Rem, for example. I really don't like the fact that, okay, Natsuki falls in love with Emilia, and it's semi-unrequited. At the end, in the second season, they do end up kissing, and she does genuinely have feelings for him, if not totally romantic. There is definitely a camaraderie between them.
I think by the end of that series, there's it's a normal romance.
But
given the last conversation they had.
Yeah, but the other female characters, one by one, it's quite evident, are falling in love with Natsuki, and in the line of embracing greed, he says, you're number one in my heart, and she's number two, and this starts to become essentially like a male, for me, a very male fan service, power fulfillment or fantasy fulfillment anime that detracts from its the other elements of storytelling that I'm a fan of. I don't like the fact that it's like, constantly catering to this protagonist, like all the women archetypes love him.
I understand the point you're making. And I think if you haven't watched more isekai, if I hadn't watched more isekai, I would feel that way. And I think initially, maybe many years ago when I originally watched this, I might have felt that way. But gosh, it's so different from the way it normally plays out, Dylan, that I don't think it's really the intention to make it in a generic like harem setup thing.
What do you mean?
Simply the fact that he doesn't, see them all as equals, right? For the majority of the anime is different.
Oh yeah.
That he has a favorite or a preference is abnormal, actually.
For the isekai,
a preference.
I just
rather than just harming it up.
My comparison are the previous three that we've watched, right? And I know that's tricky because there's a lot of isekai out there, and there's a lot of templating out there.
Also, the three that we previously watched are some of the best ones. So there's a quality difference.
Overlord didn't really fall
Overlord
into
is the
this
classic
kind of
way the harem would play out, right? Where there are a variety of people pursuing the main protagonist, just keeping them at an arm's length, right?
Yes.
I mean, Subaru is actively pursuing Emilia, rejects Ram, does
He
still
flat
love her,
rejects,
right?
Rem, not Ram.
Rem, of course, and obviously he's not going to date the little girl or Beatrice. So there's some standards at least as well.
Yeah.
Also, you get the impression that the Petra's infatuation with him is just infatuation. There's no
just a
actual
little girl,
romance.
Sorry, Beatrice's fascination with him, or who's
Petra?
The
Petra's the little girl.
Little maid.
Remind me. Oh yes.
The little girl from the village that
sorry, I didn't even she was out of my mind completely. Like there, at least they do a good job of like, pat, pat. That's sweet. 12-year-old
That's sweet,
pat,
yeah.
pat. Go
Rem and
fold
Ram
some
are
sheets.
kind of ejected from the race almost immediately.
Ram's relationships are actually the most interesting of the show, I feel.
Yeah, because she's given a little bit more time to develop.
And I mean, her relationship to Roswell is strange.
Yeah.
Very strange. And she's also interested in Garfield, right?
Garfield, yeah. Which is a little bit healthier because her relationship with
essentially a undead
Lich Boy
is
largely because he saved her and her sister when they were young.
And she relies on him for magic.
But I mean, yeah. And it's a odd one because they do make inferences that he actually led the witch cult to their clan.
I think he says that.
Exactly. So it's kind of like there's more there. There's more to the story there that we don't know.
The demon sisters have a very forgiving nature, apparently.
It would seem.
I mean,
it would seem. And when they forgive, they love.
Indeed.
They don't know that he did that, though.
They do. He tells Ram.
Does he directly tell Ram? I thought
when they're fighting.
Yeah, at the end of season 2. Yeah.
Oh, I might have forgotten that he told her then.
And he also tells Subaru, so he knows as well.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's ReZero. I like it. I don't like it as much as I like the other anime that we've reviewed so far.
So why don't you give us your rankings? We'll go through everyone's rankings so far of the 4.
Mm-hmm.
I like Konosuba the most. That's my number 1. Number 2 is Overlord. Number 3 is Yojo Senki. Number 4 is this one.
And Yesh?
Number 1 is comedy Konosuba. Number 2 is ReZero. Number 3 is Overlord, and number 4 is Yojo Senki.
Okay, interesting. So I'm like at an impasse because for number 1 competing is Yojo Senki and ReZero. Despite all its flaws, I find it one of the most compelling of the anime, but the flaws detract from it. So it's like this, for me, it's like this dance. Like if it didn't have the things that I don't like about it in it, the fan service stuff we went through, it would easily take number 1 for me, even with the pain of resetting each time. But I think it just creeps edges into number 1 for me. Not that it's an easy watch, not that I didn't hate some of it. Then Yojo Senki for number 2, just aesthetically I like it. And number 3 Konosuba, number 4 Overlord.
Okay, I'm glad we all have different orders. That's
yeah.
I'm shocked Konosuba isn't like top 2. I would never have expected that.
It just feels pointless to me. I'm sorry.
It's
like the storyline is very
so I think
there's no gravity to it.
You and me are embracing the void, right? With and the fact that it is a show about nothing, and it's just the characters trying to exist in the world and enjoy themselves as much as possible.
Also, because it's a satire of isekai, and we had already been somewhat burnt out on isekai by the time that came out, 6 years ago.
Yes,
I feel that's a very critical point you're raising. Yeah,
and the fact that in the last 6 years it's still just been isekai means that Konosuba continues to be funny to us, as all of these tropes are turned on their head.
Yeah, I can imagine that being the case for me if I had saturated myself with isekai like this the whole time. I would probably better appreciate something that is completely parodying it.
I also just think Aqua is one of my favorite characters of all time.
The useless goddess.
I love how she forgets what she's doing all the time. It's so relatable.
Yeah.
I'll have you know, I am a champion of gender equality.
And he's terrible.
He's utterly trash.
Kazuma is terrible. Kuzuma.
I feel like in most of these isekais, like the I suppose it is part of the central theme, right? Like you were trash in your old life, and your new life is slightly better, but you still have the trash elements of your personality that carry through.
The only one, well, I mean, there are a few that don't go on that sort of point, right? I mean, Yojo Senki is one of those. He wasn't trash; he was just bad.
Yeah,
it's,
I mean, he wasn't worthless, but he was not a good person.
Good
I
person.
don't know how do you say this one. Cautious hero,
Cautious
Shinjo
hero, yeah.
Yushin. He wasn't sort of trash, right? So he kind of he in a previous incarnation of him the previous time was trash, which is why he's not trash this time, I guess. So he reincarnates as a better version of himself because he died the last time. So he becomes overly cautious, hence the title of the show.
Cautious
This
hero.
time he reincarnates. Yeah, so I mean that is an interesting take on it, and I think worth watching if you've watched a lot of other isekai. You will really enjoy the way that show plays out, I guess.
Okay.
But yeah, let's say that's it for ReZero. I'm glad we've got through all of them, and
Me too.
let's finish off the cast with what we've been reading, what we're watching.
Cool.
I continued to watch Gundam Zeta Gundam, I suppose is the correct way of saying that. And I've gotten through them, going through all of the old characters at this point, making cameos and things. So that was kind of fun. It is really violent, more so than the first one, and that's saying it like something because main characters died like every third episode in the first Gundam. I mean, this one begins with like the protagonist's mother being like shot in front of him, right?
They do a better job of emotional string pulling.
I mean, I think
Zeta.
they go like too far in the show sometimes. Like there's a lot of just beating people until they're like really like destroyed on the floor. That happens in this series.
It was the 80s, man.
I mean, particularly women.
War crimes were just like breakfast cereal. You got to pick which kind you wanted
I
today.
was even reading an article where like the creator was like, I wish I didn't go so violent at some times because it may have just distracted from the story a bit. But I mean, there's a lot more emotion. The characters are a lot more like well fleshed out than they were in the first show.
Exactly.
Like Bright as a captain coming back, he's like a really good character now. Amuro continues to be trash, but I think that's just a problem.
I think they gave the writers more time to write for Zeta.
Probably, and it's edging towards that more modern feeling of anime as well, where they're really distinguishing some of the main characters, giving them proper characteristics and flaws, and humanizing them, giving them relationships, and I'm enjoying it in that regard. I still think it's not as good as I think maybe some of the later mecha shows have been. It kind of feels like Macross from a certain point of view. Even like the
Macross
design.
and Zeta are almost generation mates.
I was going to say, I think it's just after the original Macross may have come out. So that idea of like mecha transforming into jets in space might be where like the Zeta Gundam comes from. I don't know, but yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I'd recommend anyone watch Gundam. It just is maybe something everyone who likes anime should eventually watch. Other than that, I've not really been watching anything new because like the kind of season's sort of ending. Just finishing off a bunch of anime that.
Oh my god! Next season is so stacked.
Yeah, we'll get to that. I think maybe at the beginning of next show. We'll talk about some of that. But what have you guys been watching?
I've been rereading the last two novels of Overlord because the new season is coming out and I want to brush up on my novel knowledge before watching the anime.
All right. And you, Dylan?
I've been watching. The pronunciation is going to kill me. Kimetsu no Yaiba, Demon Slayer, with the Mugen Train arc, with the
delicious. Umai.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. So I mean, the art style is really good. The pacing is good. I think we've chatted about this. It's easy to watch. It's
I really
it's a good
like
production.
the Fire Guy's like perspective on life, don't you? He's
the
just
like
a positive style.
so positive. He's just accepting of like the moment he's in and doesn't seem to like regret anything, which I think
yeah
is what his like sort of character and his like fieriness is supposed to represent.
yeah
Mm.
it does
Just
feel like
wholeheartedly
that's
embracing life.
yeah it does feel like that's like that an adaptation to his background with his dad.
Yeah. Have you
That
gotten
you got to
to the
do
end of
it.
the arc yet?
I haven't. No,
Okay.
we're still. I think, if I'm not mistaken, we're in the middle of it. I think we've just killed the train.
Okay, sweet. Well, I won't say any more then.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
it was quite a twist because in the previous arc, we had met all of the Hashiras together, and like 3 of them were incredibly large assholes.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
it was nice to see a good Hashira.
he was
Yeah.
sort of one of them, though, wasn't he?
No, he was in the background laughing,
Was he? Okay.
which is assholey. But once you understand his personality,
Yeah.
it's
I mean,
just how
I
it is.
wouldn't say that he's like, you know, like the stand-up guyish type. I think he's very much in the, they look at the spirit core and it's all burning. It's kind of like there's a unidirectional aspect to him. He's going towards a specific
No, he's
direction, and
sort of
nothing's
like,
going to
yeah,
really be in his
like
way.
he's like the righteous paladin kind of type,
Mm.
Yeah.
rushing towards killing his enemies. But he's got a good
Yes.
perspective on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I guess that's it then.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Thanks, guys, for talking with me today.
Yeah, it was a good discussion.
And
Thanks
thanks
for the
everyone
cast,
for
guys.
listening. Please check out our other podcasts. Bye for now.
Thanks, Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.